Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and today what I thought I would do is I'm going to do a little show and tell. And in the show and tell I'm going to show you some projects that I have just finished up, and along the way I'm just going to give you some little tips and tricks in the creation process that I did with these various things. So what you see right in front of you right now are my shoes. Now if you've been watching my vlog, you will have heard me talk about the shoes, especially this one in the middle. And the whole idea here is to do mixed media on an old shoe. And of course I picked ladies' high heels that I got at Variety Village, and you know, go to Variety Village, which if you're not familiar with Variety Village is, just a thrift shop, a charitable thrift shop. And I went there and I just picked out a couple of pairs of shoes, and they're very inexpensive. I think it cost me like about $5 a pair. And these are what I use as my base. Now let me just show you the very first one that I made, and that's this shoe. And as you see, what I did was I took some of my printed papers, ones that I have made, deli papers, that I've used on jelly plate printing, and I just ripped them up, and I used like a Mod Podge or a matte medium, and placed them all over the shoe and sealed them. Now, before I did that, however, this shoe was originally a black in sort of a vinyl. It might have been a leather, but I think it was more of a type of shiny vinyl. And of course, things like that, your paper's not going to stick as readily. So first of all, I painted the shoe with just a coat of gesso. The gesso allows you to have a little bit of tooth so that these elements will stick better. So once that was dry, and it doesn't take long for gesso to dry, and you can dry it with a heat gun as well, then I laid the papers down, laid down a layer of Mod Podge. Yeah, I used Mod Podge on this, but as I said, you could use matte medium or whatever. You could even use white glue for that matter. Spread it on the shoe, laid down the pieces, and then I sealed them over the top with the Mod Podge as well. Once that was dry, I added my embellishments. Now, before I added the bling to this, I did paint the sole, and I did it in red because isn't red supposed to be what, chimichus or something, or have red soles and supposed to be the sign of a very expensive shoe? And I had some metallic paint, so I did the heel with that. And I didn't paint the inside of this one, but on my other ones you'll see that I did in there. I did in this one because it was already black and I didn't think I needed to add anything else to it. I tried to do a little stenciling on the side of it, and that sort of worked out, but because of the curvature, trying to get the stencil to stay there, and even though I sprayed it with repositionable spray and that, there was some seepage underneath, so I didn't get a lot on here with that. I added some cheap bling around the edges, and then I created these little butterflies, and these were also out of paper that I had created. I think I used some spray inks on cardstock, and I just had a punch in several different sizes of butterflies, punched them out, mounted them on here, glued them down well, and the flowers are just Prima flowers that I put together. So that was my first one, and I think that one turned out very nice. My second one was more of a vintage look. It was a platform shoe to start with. So in this one's case, I covered it with tissue. I think it's Tim Holtz tissue paper. And I did the same method as I did with the papers on here. Used Mod Podge. Painted the sole, painted the heel and the sole gold this time, gold metallic, and I did the inside as well. And the inside took about 3 coats to get it that dark in there. Then I added my bling to the side, and these were just simple. They came already like this. You just peeled them off and they're sticky on the back, but I did cover those in Mod Podge as well, just to make sure they stayed stuck down. I trimmed it all the way around, little gold dots here, which are just simply stickles. Found these little bows at my local scrapbooking store, so I added those to both sides. And the flowers I made, they're heartfelt, Ariana blooms. I cut them out of some paper that I already had. It was paper that I had printed out that was looked like music notes, and if you look at it really carefully, you can tell that. Aged it a little bit with some distress inks, and then I covered it in artist varnish, sprayed it on, made up a mixture of artist varnish, put some very fine glitter onto that and sprayed it again, and that keeps the glitter from coming off on your hands. And just added those to the side as well. So I think that one turned out pretty nice. But this is my favorite. This took a long time to make because this is beads. These are all plastic beads that I picked up at Michael's, and they weren't that expensive, about $6.99 for this mixed package of them, and I think I pretty much used about 1 1/3 packages for this by the time I was done. Problem with this was I could only do small sections at a time because of the curvature, and I was using a fairly strong glue, but a glue that took a while to dry, so you had to wait until each section was dry, otherwise things would start to move around. There were some gaps in between the beads, so what I did was I filled them in with gold stickles, so it looks almost like a gold filigree. Painted the platform part in a gold metallic paint as well as the heel, and painted gold metallic paint on the sole. And on the inside of this, I put all these flowers. As you can see, I'm trying to keep it in the shot here. Not easy. Put all these flowers inside, but to hold them down, I used clay. And I just made balls of clay, stuck them to this, the inside of the shoe, and stuck the stems of these fake flowers into that. And now that it's dry, these suckers aren't going anywhere. It does make the shoe kind of heavy, but nevertheless, it works very well. So I'm really happy with this. Now I have one shoe left over, and what I'm thinking of doing with that shoe, it's the same style as this middle one. I'm thinking of making something a little bit more comic, a little more whimsical. I'm going to get a pair of old glasses or sunglasses, and I think I'm going to mount them on the, let me just pull this one up here, onto the tongue of the shoe, kind of a thing. And I had this vision of a sort of a Groucho Marx look, but we'll see. And when I get that one done, when I figure it all out, I'll be sure to show it to you. Okay, so tips on this, anything goes, really. So if you've got an old pair of shoes laying around the house you don't know what to do with, this is kind of fun. What do I do with these when they're done? Well, I've used them as a table centerpiece. Put some candles around them. Makes a very interesting table centerpiece and kind of a conversation piece. Right now they're sitting on top of my home cinema speakers on display. You could use them, somebody suggested to me that if you had one that was wide enough, you could use it as a wine bottle holder, which would be kind of neat. You could use it for pens, pencils, paintbrushes, whatever as well. You could use it, I've seen videos on YouTube where somebody actually lined it with that kind of material that you find in jewelry boxes that you can stick like rings and things in, so you can use it as a jewelry holder. Really, there's probably a lot of things you could do with this, so you just use your imagination. Alright, so that was one project. Let's move on here to this project, and just let me move the shoes out of the line of fire here. Give me just a second. Okay, so this is basically how you take a set of cheap playing cards and make them into a little album. Now this album actually ended up being an album of ATC cards because they're the size of ATC cards. So you can take your deck of playing cards and make them into ATC cards as well. But what I was doing with this was I was trying out Seth Apter's methods for doing different backgrounds on things. Now Seth Apter, if you don't know who he is sort of the mixed media guru. He is sort of like Tim Holtz, except his style is very different. And he definitely takes randomness to the height, because how I did these cards, or how Seth did them, because I copied his style, is he takes the cards out, and first of all, he gessos. all of the cards, because cards usually have a plastic coating on them. He gessos them all on both sides, and he doesn't spend a lot of time gessoing them. He just slaps it down, dries them, and then what he does is he takes a pile of them that have been gessoed, and he randomly puts them in a pile, like 10, 12, 20 cards, whatever you want, and then starts to throw paint on them. He does one method that I thought was really cool is scrape some paint, a couple of colors of paint on one side of one of these cards, and then he'll take that card and use it almost like a printing press. He'll lay it on top of another card, just sort of mush it around and move it around like that. And he does it with, he puts a little bit more paint on one card and does the rest of them. Then when he's got a basic background down, he puts more layers. So he'll use his stencils, and he'll still keep them in a pile, flip them around, put his stencils on top, and then just dab with a cosmetic sponge or whatever, acrylic paint or your ink, through that. So you're not really getting the whole stencil design, you're just getting bits and pieces of it randomly all over the cards. He does that a couple of times, maybe with a couple of different stencils. Then he does, he does some rubber stamping in the same way, just mixes up the pile and just all over with a rubber stamp. He does that with I used like StazOn ink for that because it's waterproof. Then he takes a brush and a dry brush and some more paint in a color he wants to use, a complementary color, and he just like swipes it randomly over various cards. He does the edges with a direct to from direct pad method, you know, where you just brush it around the edges. And then he takes a paintbrush and some acrylic paint, waters down the paint, and splatters all over. And again, constantly mixing up the pile so nothing comes out the same. And the final result is very nice, and what you have here. So after I got the backgrounds done, I decided to add images to these and words. And these images that I have on all of these cards come from Mike Deacon's digital downloads, and I just cut them out, threw them down, and he has sayings along with these pictures, and I just cut those out and threw them down. I didn't spend a great deal of time thinking about the composition of these, so really I have a little album here all made up of ATC cards. But you could leave these a little bit more blank, and what Seth Apter does is on the one side he creates his images, and on the other side he leaves blank and uses that for journaling. So it's a little art journal album too, a mini. And to finish the whole thing up, I just punched a hole in the top here. You could do it with a wrap, whichever way you want to bind it. You could have a couple of these binder clips, or I guess they're called binder rings. And I just used one, and then I tied some ribbons on it, and I made a couple of little bead strings here out of leftover beads from my shoes, actually, and threw it together on that. So I think it came out kind of nice. It's kind of a cute little project. I did it mainly to learn his techniques that I can apply to art journal pages and to other projects and larger projects as well. But I think something like this might make a really unique and interesting gift for someone as well. And you, as I said, you don't have to do both sides with images. You could do images on one side and leave a space, maybe put a little white gesso on it or whatever, so it's a little lighter, and it could become a little journal for somebody as well. So that was a fun project to do, and all from a simple, cheap set of playing cards that I bought at the dollar store. So what other little projects have I done? Well, here's this. Now, I did a video about this, so I don't need to go into the details, but this is started off as one large sheet of paper, and I did all these different background techniques, basically similar to what you would do with an art journal page. And then you fold it and cut it so that it makes a booklet. And I have a video that shows this. It's called Making a Book from a Single Sheet of Paper, or from one sheet of paper. while I was doing the paper, any leftover paint and things like that, I did tags with them as well. This is a tag that's stuck on here, 2 tags actually. Well, then I goofed up. I made a mistake. When I was gluing the pages down, there should have been 4 double-sided pages in this booklet. Turned out I ended up with 3 because I accidentally glued one of the pages to the back cover page as well. Made a really nice strong cover though, for sure. Well, I basically did this just to try the technique, but then I got thinking, well, maybe I could make it into a Miyadori. A Miyadori is basically a portfolio that you can insert pages into, and by using basically an elastic band on the spine. So I took the one remaining inside page and I cut it down a little bit, rounded the corners, put a strip of glue at each edge, and it became a pocket. And then I had these signatures. These I had made a long time ago for, I used to make, well I haven't made one in a long time, hard-covered books. You know, I bound them, I made them from scratch, and I'd make my own signatures, the pages for inside. And this is one set of signatures I had left over from a project, and I thought, well, why don't I stick them in here for the Miyadori? Because they already have lines on them, so you can write on them. And what I used is this elastic. It's not really an elastic band, it's an elasticized string, whatever, for lack of better words. It actually came off a small box of chocolates and I saved it. So you just wrap it around, tie it in a knot, then you can slip more things in here as time goes by. I could have built another pocket down in here for things too. I didn't bother, but then you have a closure, and closure was just simply this ribbon wrapped around. Now I glued the ribbon down at the back and on the front, but I also reinforced it by taking those tags that I had made that match and putting them, gluing those down on top to make the ribbon a little stronger. And with this enclosure I left enough ribbon so that, you know, if you get thicker things in here it will expand. So that's taking another, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do with the paper when I first made it, and through circumstances of mistakes or series of mistakes, or what Lemony Snicket says, some unfortunate events, I created a Midori. So anything else that I've been doing for the show and tell? Nope, but I hope you got something out of this, and this isn't a process video. I didn't show the process, but as I said, there is one for the shoes. There is one for this as well. There isn't one for the ATCs, but I think those are self-evident, and so you can check those on my other videos. So anyways, that was Show and Tell 1, and I'll see you for Show and Tell 2 sometime down the road. Bye bye.